Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Kishi Ducre. I am a Black Studies professor as well as an avid traveler who is interested in bringing content related to Black Studies, Black feminist geography, family travel, and especially decolonized travel. And as that, I am also the creator of the SoulJourners Academy, which brings tours, travel tours, as well as online learning and children's books related to decolonized travel of the Black diaspora. So if you are interested in any of those topics, please like and subscribe. And good evening again. I'm coming to you from that time between Christmas and New Year's. And so this is a big experiment right now because everybody's home. So I've told them to mute the PlayStations and the Southern Soul blues music to give me an opportunity to talk a little bit about um, family traveling with special needs. So today's topic is family travel with special needs. And I want to talk about my mistakes in planning family trips without being really intentional about access for members of our party. And I also want to leave you with about 3 to 4 tips after I take you through a timeline of the mistakes that I've made. And now I know what to do when it comes to planning a trip with people that have different needs, different from the norm. So if like maybe some of you, like I did as well, I planned the part of the Christmas gifts was a trip. We are all, when I say we, it's me, my husband, my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my mom. We're all going to take a cruise, a quick cruise. And it was a surprise to them. I made the little tickets up, you pack your bags, and I gave them a little itinerary. And so it was really special to do. But I also remind myself that I would need to look at certain things because between all 5 of us, me, my husband, my mom, and my 2 boys, my 2 youngest boys, we have special needs. Without telling you who needed it, I can tell you that somebody in our travel party has limited mobility. Okay. They can walk, but they can't walk for long periods of time. They use a cane sometimes. They use a walker sometimes. And when you're going on a trip, you're going to be moving around quite a bit. So know that. Another one, or I should say, not like it's a different person, but another traveler in our party has multiple food allergies. When I say multiple, they are allergic to wheat, sesame, egg, shellfish, all nuts. Those are the major ones. Yes, multiple food allergies. Knock on wood that we have not gone into anaphylactic shock, but we have had exposure. And as a result of exposure, hives and swollen faces and hives along the back. So we have had experience, but never a major event. And it's always something that we have to be careful of. Another one in our party, or at least our party experiences, that I don't let you think it's all different people, is kind of order processing issues. Found out about a little less than a year ago through testing that they're on the spectrum. To me, it's on the autism spectrum, but to me, it's not. When people say that spectrum is so large from being, someone in our party who has order processing issues to someone who is nonverbal. So I like to say beyond, someone has autism. That is not a thing per se, but to say what it is a symptom they struggle with, and they struggle with complicated things or uncertainty. They really like schedules, and sometimes they react negatively when things are out of whack. So I say that instead of saying autism. And then other members of our party are over 250 pounds. And then another person in our party is non-insulin dependent, but has diabetes. So let me break that down to you. On this upcoming trip, managing 5 people, which have the following limitations or special needs. I don't want to call them limitations. Needs that in order for them to be safe and comfortable and enjoy the trip, like everyone else who doesn't have these issues, they need, particular attention to. So again, that is limited mobility, multiple food allergies, order processing issues, over 250 pounds, and diabetes. Who knows about the undiagnosed stuff? And I'm pointing this out to you because for some of you, that may have been one of these, or a similar diagnosis may have stopped you from considering travel, or makes it feel overwhelming. If you said, I'm going to do this, even though I know these things about my family, I'm going to do this anyway. Sorry about that. I'm going to do this anyway, and maybe feeling overwhelmed. So I'm here to tell you that I'm traveling with a bunch of travelers. Some, myself is included in there, with travelers who have various needs that may be different, may be atypical from a traveler. And I'm here to tell you, about, 4 things that you can do to make, again, this trip as enjoyable for everyone, and you aren't worried about things as much as you do. So I try to explain special needs. These are the ones that are involved in my party, but there are others. You may have a traveler with more significant processing issues. You may have a traveler with, visual limitations or hearing limitations. So this is just my particular situation in looking at this trip that we're about to take, and what you may also be experiencing. But it's also important to remember when it comes to disability, disability and accessibility issues, is that all of us, we may not have these things now, any of these things now, but particularly when it comes to disability, we can expect to face a period of disability in our lives that may affect how we travel. So this doesn't have to be for someone who is actively have people that need special needs in their group, but you may have found yourself recovering from surgery, or maybe, God forbid, knock on wood again, you have had an accident that requires you to wear a boot on your foot, or requires you to have, some other thing that classifies you as special needs for an area. And then as you get old, some of us ain't have these issues 20 years ago, right? So I think it's important for people who don't have disabilities to also be aware of it. It may not be you and your travelers right now, but many of us face eras or periods of disability at times where it might be important. Do you cancel your entire trip because you have to wear a boot? You don't have to, and these are why. And so I think that this applies to a lot more people. But let me press on. The one thing to understand about disability and accessibility is that the world is not designed for accessibility. The one good thing I can say about living in the US it's hard to find those things, but the one thing I must say that the US, I think, has become number one in a positive way is the ability to have accessible workspaces, public spaces. That is not common in many areas of the US, and it's not even like a G7 thing. Like, it's not even people who are major places that are major economic powerhouses still may lag behind the US when it comes to being accessible for folks with special needs. Um, with that said, you should also remember that the reason why the US is as accessible as it is for people with special needs is because of a fight for justice by disability activists. And we can point to one particular legislation that really changed how things were done. So that would be the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, which is legally binding for people who, and corporations and entities who refuse to create accessible spaces for folks. With this rollback of DEI at the federal level, really DEI is not just DEI, it's DEIA. Okay, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And so some of these things that have been rolled back really do include not only issues around race and gender, and physical limitation, but physical limitations by people. Rolling those things back and having spaces and workspaces more inclusive for people who find it difficult to move to those spaces because of special needs is also one of the things that we need to be cognizant of. So let me get off of my soapbox, beginning with this idea that the world is not designed for accessibility. As a former higher education administrator, there was a rule called the 80. There is a rule. I'm just not a college administrator anymore, but there is a rule that exists called the 80-20 when planning. So when you're planning, you're planning for emergencies, emergency evacuation, or your plan Bs for operating an institution where you are responsible for thousands of people, residential students, faculty, staff. There's an 80-20 rule, and I'm sure it exists in other places, where you want to create a situation where if you have to move people rapidly, deploy things rapidly, that you want to design something where 80% of the population can do it. And then the 20% are the special needs folks. And so the first line of operations is to design something where 80% of your population can move somewhere else or to be, quarantined or whatever. And then you find later that 20%, which to me is ass backwards. Because if you can design a situation for your most vulnerable population, your 20%, then that's going to guarantee that your 80 is covered, right? If you know how you're going to get out, if you have emergency plans for evacuation for the students who are wheelchair bound, that way is probably not only going to help those in the 20% that are have mobility issues, it's also going to satisfy the needs of 80%. So I am of a belief that you handle the 20%, the most vulnerable, and by addressing their needs, then the 80% comes along because they're kind of the easiest route to do. That general rule that I'm talking about, like a 21st and the 80, is almost the principle of universal design when we create curriculum or things like that. That if you design something that is accessible for people that have special needs, people who have hearing loss and who have visual loss, then if you design something that they can fall into and follow, then it only helps everyone else, right? If you design something for people who have the hardest time accessing what you are trying to teach, then if you design for them, then the others will also be the universal design. But the world is not universally designed. I guess the most visible example are those curb cuts. Again, ADA, American Disability Act, has required kind of new planning to create new sidewalks, to create curb cuts so that people who do have wheelchairs can easily, safely navigate on the streets of our towns and cities. And we know from that, at least I know, that that has not only helped wheelchair users, but it has helped people with strollers. It has helped, people who are biking have to get on and get off when they can't be in the road. So that when you design for others who have challenges, it helps people who you didn't even think would need that accommodation. So before I was well aware of these things and a DEIA professional myself, I made quite a few mistakes when it came to planning and not taking the people in my party, even if it was a one-day trip, even if it was a road trip, not even the long distance international trips. But I didn't always think clearly about what I was doing, and people intended to suffer needlessly. And so I want to share some of those mistakes with you, and then I want to tell you what you can do to avoid the things that I did. You with me? So, um, one of our travelers has limited mobility. Again, she doesn't get around. Sorry, they don't get around in a wheelchair always, but I have, when we were just on trips in this, going to a museum or something, I didn't take that into account. If you're in a museum, you're walking around. If you're in a children's play space, you're walking around. So, yes, they had a walker, or yes, they could use a cane, but if you're at a museum and going up and down places, they need more than that. And so I would plan to go on, these trips or these places without realizing if there were mobile options available at the place. Now, sometimes I got lucky. Sometimes I get lucky. We went to San Diego Zoo. If you haven't been to San Diego Zoo, it is enormous. And we get there, and then I think, oh, I wonder if they have scooters. Luckily, they did have scooters, but I didn't plan a trip with that. So if they didn't have scooters, there is no way we could have, there is absolutely no way we could have, no way. Some of the museums that we went to, again, not on major long trips, but just, trip to a museum, 45 minutes away. I get there and I'm asking, oh, is there a wheelchair or scooter? Again, I got lucky many of those times where they did have, if they didn't have motorized, they had, a manual, a wheelchair. So I was lucky. Even shopping, going to like an outlet mall or something, you're going to need something. And I didn't always take that into account, but I was saved many times because the option was there. But you should still find out and pre-plan if you can, because if you're going on a particular day, they may be out of them. So you might want to see if it's a first come, first serve, or if you can order them ahead of time. So I was lucky in that, but my mistakes is that I did not take them into account and plan beforehand. Another mistake that I made very recently, because I'm thinking when I make accommodations, I think about, for me selfishly, picking plane seats for someone with limited mobility. I just look at the plane seat chart. I like to sit near the wing. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but that's just my thing. We all have our like travel, things, lucky rabbit's foot things. So when I was making reservations, plane reservations, for someone with limited ability, I put them near the wing. That was dumb. Luckily, I was making reservations for someone, they were independently going. Luckily, the either the flight attendant or the person at the ticket counter realized where they were seated and said, you know what, you need to sit closer to an entrance exit so you don't have to walk past a bunch of things to get a bunch of seats to get to the middle of the plane. That never occurred to me. As a able-bodied person, less able-bodied as I age, but as an able-bodied person, I didn't realize that I needed to get a ticket closer to the front of the plane, as close as possible, or even pay the extra so that that person with limited mobility would have a chance to sit down very quickly, or when they got on the plane, and to, get off the plane quickly when they reach their destination. So that's one thing that I didn't do well, was picking the plane seats. The next one has to do my mistake. So the other thing about that is it's not just picking the plane seats, but when they are traveling, that you make sure that you check the boxes for wheelchair assistance once they get to the airport, making sure that the ride is accessible. You should look for Ubers that are accessible when ordering stuff. So just all the things that you have to think through. A person with limited mobility or whatever need they have, you have to think through the whole stage of the process of where they're going. Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about like the tips. These are just my mistakes. I'm just going through a list of my mistakes. The other thing is, with the traveler with multiple food allergies, there were times, I regret to say, there were times when there was an allergic reaction that was not as severe as needing an EpiPen. I carry an EpiPen everywhere we go. But there was, it was just, not just, but they were allergic reactions that weren't as severe. So they needed Allegra. They needed some kind of allergy med. And I don't know what happened. I guess I became comfortable because we successfully navigated place traveling with just the EpiPen. But there were times a while ago. I'm smarter now, but there were times when I didn't. I had the EpiPen, but I didn't have the allergy medicine that they needed to. Um, the Benadryl and the Allegra that we didn't have with us, and so here I am. It's easy if you're traveling domestically and you have a rental car, or you're with friends or family, to go run to, the drugstore. But when you are when you're in a small town in Costa Rica, when you're in a small town, Costa Rica, and you've made a vacation where you're not really anywhere in a commercial area, hunting around and explaining that you needed allergy medications is not a good thing to do. Or relying on the resort's little pharmacy, their little pharmacy, is not always the best thing to do. So I found myself not having kind of the backups that I needed in the less severe ones. I had the EpiPen, but I didn't have any of the allergy meds. I didn't have any fever reducers. With traveling with kids, and now I have a bit more extensive first aid kit, without being like bringing a bunch of stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute too. I can barely read my handwriting on this one. Booking accommodations that were not accessible. And that would be, again, this is based on me. When I'm traveling selfishly, I don't like to be on the first floor. I want to be generally as high up as I can so I can have a vista. Um, but when you're with someone who has limited ability or special needs, they feel most comfortable on the first floor. Um, and it's not about them not being able to get out in case of an emergency. It's about their feeling of independence and safety that you have to keep in mind. And so I learned that you have to compromise and be on the first floor sometimes so that they can be accessible. That you have to think about the distance if you're not on the first floor or not able to be on the first floor. I have booked rooms where we were far from the elevator. And if travel's like, I don't want to be near an elevator because then I can hear the car go up and down. Well, guess what? You don't want to be at the end of a hallway if you have someone without a scooter who's using a walker or who's using a cane. Yeah, I made that mistake too. So there are some things that you have to negotiate on or have to realize that it might not be your travel your travel style, sitting at the wing, getting the highest floor, away from an elevator is not a thing you want to do when traveling or making travel arrangements for someone who has special needs. Okay? Um Another mistake, particularly with the food allergies and with someone with diabetes, is not is getting somewhere and not knowing which places offer food that is acceptable. Um, I don't get so deep in the planning where I know what restaurants we're going to. I just know there are restaurants, and there have been times when I like, oh, there's a gluten-free restaurant over here, and then we spend the day trying to figure out how to get there and looking in or I'm on my trip, looking through TripAdvisor, looking for recommendations for that. I'm not suggesting that you have to search out for every meal, but I would, have identify at least one restaurant that know could make things that could fit the diet of someone who has food allergies. And what I tend to do with the person I travel with a lot who has food allergies is I bring stuff. And I book places where I have access to at least, a stove or small stove or a microwave so that if we can't find a place or if we just want to eat something quickly, that they can have something too. So my wheat intolerant traveler, we throw in gluten-free noodles. We always travel with at least a box of noodles. We travel with his bread. It becomes easier if we're traveling domestically because then I can get stuff delivered. You could just go on, Instacart or DoorDash, and get some of the things delivered from a local grocery store. But when you're going abroad and you don't know, then I like to have a couple of things that I know that they could eat. When we took our longest international trip, which was from New York to South Africa, I had the stuff. I brought some things, right? But I didn't bring anything in our carry-ons that he could eat on this long plane ride. I had requested gluten-free meal, but because of multiple food allergies, he couldn't even eat that meal because it had some other allergen in it. It was gluten-free, but it might have eggs in it. Couldn't eat that. Gluten-free, but it had nut. So I thought I was doing a good thing with ordering gluten-free, but because of multiple allergies, I should have packed a couple of his sandwiches for that long trip. So again, my mistakes. And then for the traveler that has order processing issues, before I knew that they had order processing things and needed to have a plan and needed to know what they were going into with uncertainty and how discombobulated they would get from the uncertainty, I would get short with them. And I'd be like, why are you acting like this? What is your problem? And once I got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, looking back before I knew the diagnosis, this is what happened. So now what becomes important for them is that they know what they're getting into. I create a special itinerary. I give them the numbers of the rooms. I give them a map. They like to look things up. They've gone so far as to go onto that website where you can see where airplane seats are located, and they go find this, like, having this knowledge calms the anxiety around going to a new place. And so there are things like that. And I think I've tried to hit on many of the things, the mistakes that I've made over the time because we have such special needs in our party. So I have 5 things that you can do to travel with ease with people with special needs, including you, if you have special needs. Number 1, check the accessibility of your itinerary. If you're traveling, you have an itinerary. Look at your whole trip and ask a question. The beauty of the US being the beauty of the importance of being accessible in the US thus far is that most places that you go that have a website will have an accessibility tab, and you can find out all the things that they have. You don't have to go talk to anyone. So when it comes to airports, make sure that you click on the wheelchair assistance. The person who travels and has limited mobility has told me that airports can be iffy. Like, it all depends on, they've had iffy circumstances, but they love the way that Amtrak treats them. Amtrak is like helping you get on, helping you get your bags. And they rave about Amtrak. But despite even clicking wheelchair assistance for travel, it can be uncertain, but still know that. Accessibility in your hotel, go ahead and request that first floor room if the person it's important to talk to them about what their needs are. Because I, even having done this and made the mistakes, some of those things change. So check in with the person about what they need for travel, and then check your itinerary by places as if they have the things that they need. So the things that are easy to think about are, again, the mobility issues. So if you're going to a museum and if you're going to take a tour, you need to find out if this museum has wheelchairs available, if this tour operator has an accessible tour, if they can get on and get off of the boat and of the bus. And so look at your itinerary. You already made it. You made plans for holidays and you're bringing folks with special needs. Go ahead and click the tab on all the websites to see what they have. You should be able to do that. So for the cruise, there are accessible rooms available, right? The cruise that we're going on, the person we're traveling with does not have their own scooter, but you can order through a recommended service from the cruise line of getting a scooter delivered directly to your stateroom, and renting it for the duration of the cruise. And I was just like, wow. And of course, I would not find that out if I hadn't gone to the accessibility feature of the cruise line. What do we have for making this trip? So check the accessibility for each of the items on your itinerary. They'll have things that you didn't even realize. And so do that. That's how I knew there was a scooter. I had no idea. So, each piece of itinerary, are there accessibility rooms, accessible bathrooms, are there ramps, is there wheelchair assistance for the person who is over 250 pounds, but mobility, or if there are weight limits to activities, particularly if you're doing kind of sports activities, what is the weight limit for zip lining? um, what is the height limit for zip lining, the age. Um, we were gonna do, I was planning an iceberg. Crazy. I was trying to plan a helicopter ride to an iceberg in Alaska. Yes. Yes, I was. And I asked, is there weight limits? And there were weight limits. And I kind of backed off from doing that. And they said, oh, I'll maybe another time. Yeah. So weight limits, accessibility, things of that nature. Another way that you can do it and doesn't feel so overwhelming is if you're listening to me, right? So also follow disability influencers. There are folks that travel and create content because of their special needs and considerations when they travel. I will put the list of influencers in the notes of this video. One that I can call off the top of my head is Aisha of Abroad Agility. She has MS, I believe, and she lives in Panama and she travels extensively. And she talks about what life is like for her as someone who has mobility, who is challenged by mobility. And she travels all over. She lives abroad, but she travels extensively. And so I watch her content just because she has great content, but she's also a great person to watch and has taught me when it comes to people who are in my travel party who have these as well. There used to be a guy, I have to find him. I'll put him in the notes. There used to be a guy before YouTube was, I think he would post maybe at Facebook or Instagram or something, and he used to post about his experiences being an overweight traveler. And I didn't even think about being overweight as a traveler. And so he traveled all over the world and talked about his experience with being someone who was over 250 pounds and what it was like. So there are influencers that you can follow, that you can learn from them. And then, hey, bring it up to the person in your travel party. Hey, I just saw this and they said that, you know, the place that they wanted to go is cobblestone streets, but this is what they did. What do you think about that? It's a great way to start a conversation and get you to become sensitive to the ways that people have to travel when they aren't the typical traveler. And number 3, take what you need, but know where you can find it, where you're going. Take what you need, but know where you can find it, where you're going. So this comes back to the food allergies. I bring some things, not extensively, not for the duration of our trip, but I do bring some things with me that make it easier for them to be comfortable and fed, and me feeling like, as their caregiver, that I don't have to worry. So bringing the extra allergy medicine, bringing some packs of little things that they can eat as snacks. And again, also, if I'm traveling domestically, I also know that I don't have to have this full backpack of stuff, but I do a little bit of research of where I'm going to see if that can be available for them. So I'm going on scouting trips. I have to hit, if there's any places where I'm thinking about living abroad, I have to hit the grocery store. That's a must, because I want to see if the things that I need for their special diet are available. And so it makes the possibility of that place being a place to land even better, because I know that they have, X, Y, and Z. So don't feel that you need to bring everything with you. You can research the time and the area to see if they have those things available. So Again, back to I can rent a scooter for the duration of the cruise. We don't have to bring a scooter with us. We can just rent it for that time. And I was like, that's a no-brainer. That we don't have to worry about wherever we are if it's accessible if I can rent something that we could bring with us. So take what you need, do an inventory, throw that extra stuff in your bag, but also see if you can get it there and it kind of eases your worry about not having everything. Okay. One of the things related to this is um, a group of travelers that I've run into have found have there's a like a card deck now of people's allergies and explaining that they have allergies in major languages, right? If you're a global traveler and you have allergies, food allergies, they're the cards that you can take when you're in Vietnam or that you can take when you're in Mexico to say, I have severe allergies and I can't have this in that language. You need to be very precise in those terms, in terms of requirements for food. And I said I was going to buy that. We've only really been to Spanish speaking countries, and I have enough Spanish to be able to say that. But if we do travel, we plan to travel throughout anywhere in Europe and Asia, then I want those cards to say, hey, you can't have this. So there's that. There's make sure your people have med alert, but the bracelets to let them know of stuff. For my kid, when they were little with food allergies, they had something because they weren't always aware they had an allergy bracelet. He doesn't need that now. He's able to articulate things for himself and advocate for himself. But if you do have a small child that doesn't go to daycare, you might want to put a little allergy bracelet on them, particularly if they go to like the babysitting services of where you're going. Keep that on there, and probably cards if it's a place that English isn't spoken. If yeah. So number one was check this as accessibility throughout your itinerary. Number two was follow disability influencers. Number three was take what you need and know where to find it where you're going. Number four, this is simple but not done. Be in conversation with your doctors, please. Or if you have an institution that has a travel medicine office, people do it when they are traveling to tropical places. If they need malarial meds or whatever, you check in to see what vaccinations you might need if you are visiting some exotic locale, right? So do the same with your family pediatrician or your general practitioner. I'm going so and so, and I have this. You have any insights as to what I might be aware of or what I should ask for? Some of them know, some of them don't know, but you should always be in contact if you're doing things with your trusted physician. And number five, relax and enjoy, especially if you've done 1 through 4, right? If you feel more prepared, if you've checked the accessibility of your itinerary, if you've had conversations with the person who's traveling with you about what they need, if you've had conversations with your physician, if you've been watching, then you should be able to relax and enjoy. Part of the problem with me when I was making my mistakes is that I was always worried and waiting for something bad to happen because of the traveler with food allergies. And sometimes it did. Like I would say every 4 to 5 trips, in one trip, he has an allergic reaction. Not anaphylactic shock. We have our EpiPen, but just some, swollen eyes. He had really, really swollen eyes in Hawaii. I don't know what he came into contact with. When we were in Jamaica once, I don't know what it was, but he was some flare up from allergy. And so I know I prepared for what I can prepare for. I know the steps when there's an emergency. And so having done this work, you can be able to enjoy and relax and have fun and not worry when you get somewhere. Oh my gosh, do they have like, you don't have to worry about that. Oh, I'm looking around. What are the weight limits? You don't have to do that. Oh, where are the sharps containers? Like, you're prepared when you execute, when it's time to execute it, you can relax and enjoy your trip. That's the most important thing. So, with that said, out of all of the mistakes I made with special need travelers in my party, years of having special needs travelers in my party, and some of my own things, when I plan a trip for my family, I am aware of all these things and I do all of these things. And so, with SoulJourners Academy, offers travel tours, I'm also keenly aware of accessibility on our trips. So, if you're interested in going on a SoulJourners Academy trip, please come along. Our next trip is to New Orleans. We had to cancel Jamaica. We were going in Jamaica. We were preparing to go. We would be in Jamaica now, I think. We would leave on January 1st. But because of Melissa, some of the places that I wanted to go to were heavily affected by Melissa. So we have moved the Jamaica trip to 2027. Right, we just moved it by a year because I want to go to those places and I want to support those places because they need our support. But our next trip will be to New Orleans. New Orleans is an amazing place to be. The food is sensational. The music is incredible. And the unique blends of African culture mixed with Creole creates this amazing and unique place. And I want to take people on a trip there to understand the history of Black resistance. The largest slave uprising happened outside of New Orleans. We're going to talk about that. There is a plantation there. I know you're going to say a plantation. This is a plantation. The Whitney Plantation is designed from the enslaved's point of view. This is not like I've only been to one plantation, and it is a Whitney plantation. So trust me when I say this. So there will be opportunities to eat things, and I will be asking about allergies because, that's important to me. There will be opportunities to listen to music, to understand the roots of this music, to understand the roots of Mardi Gras, to talk about slave resistance. And so welcome you to that SoulJourners Academy trip for spring break. It encompasses the week of right before Good Friday through Easter Monday. So what is that, May 30th to April 3rd or something? So if you're interested, I will provide you a link to get more information for you. And again, I'm always thinking about accessibility. And so you can be assured that I take accessibility very seriously on our SoulJourners trip. And then next summer, which is not that far away, there are people who are really good planners who are already planning for summer. We will be going to South Africa. The location is going to be announced. I've been to Cape Town in Durban and would love to go back. But I've also have some interest in Johannesburg. So we'll see. And I'll be announcing that no later than probably by March. So if you want more information on New Orleans, I'll have a link for that. And if you want to be on the waiting list when the announcement for the city in South Africa where we will be, because we will concentrate on one city, not a lot of moving around, you can get on the waiting list to find out about South Africa summer. So I hope this has helped you. That you don't have to wait and worry about some scary moment is going to happen. I hope these ideas and tips will help you be prepared, and make sure that the trip that you're planning, that you spent so much time and energy and money planning, that it is something that can be enjoyable for everyone in your party, regardless of their physical, intellectual limitations. So that's really important. And I hope that you like this content. And if you do, again, I would encourage you to like and to subscribe, to comment. What are some types of special needs that I did not bring up? And I would love to search them for you. I know there are people who are epileptics. That's not been my experience, but I can definitely find some influencers that talk about travel with those with epilepsy, or those other conditions that make traveling a bit of a challenge, but not insurmountable. So comment if you have some ideas about what you do, or if you want some help. Our community can certainly figure things out. And also share if you know someone who has told you, girl, I can't go because I have this, or girl, I can't go because my relative has this. Share this video with them to let them know that it is possible, that we are out here still doing the thing despite what limitations that we may have, that there are definitely better places to go, but you can go. All right, so pack your bags, and I hope you join me either on a trip or continue to join me in conversation. Bye.